Okay, welcome to Revolutionizing Logistics, the goods to person approach to efficient supply chains. The information discussed in this session represents the views of the individuals and does not constitute legal advice. You should consult with your organization's leadership and legal counsel for any advice beyond this. Thank you. Hello, my name is Dave Persine. I've been with Alpine for several years now. I'm a managing director, and I am in the God, I can't think of the name of the group, but I am. And anyway, I've been working with Alpine for quite a long time. I'm here to introduce the two presenters for this process, and I'm going to let them present themselves. Jim,
Thanks,
take it
Jim.
away.
Yep, thank you. Jim Chamberlain. I'm Senior Managing Director at Alpine within our warehousing practice. I've been with Alpine for just under 5 years and spent my entire career working within the four walls of distribution centers, 30 plus years experience, a lot of work with labor management systems, layout design, automation, all the things that are cost components within the four walls of a facility.
And I'm Tyler Daniels. I've been with Alpine for almost 3 years now. As a data engineer, I focus primarily within the four walls as well, specializing in storage type analysis, determining the right slot size, also the slotting of items, the evaluation of different automation alternatives, picking and packing processes. This is right up our alley. We're happy to present to you guys.
All right, so today we are going to be talking about first off, just the introduction into the revolutionizing logistics, what we're really talking about as it relates to how businesses are operated traditionally versus how they can be operated as you continue to grow your business and become more sophisticated. So we'll get into current picking and packing processes that we see quite commonly in the industry. And then we talk about how we look to optimize pick and pack processes. And the neat thing is one size doesn't fit all. All businesses are different. But when you're having good problems where your business is growing, these type of technologies help you to scale that business effectively and efficiently. And then we'll also talk right at the end, how can Alpine help you? This is one of the things we do for our clients, and we can help you along the journey, and we'll just give you a little bit of a send-off with that at the end of the presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to hit the chat with your questions, and Dave will field those. We'll try and answer them as we go, and then we'll also take time at the end of the presentation. All right, so today, like I kind of mentioned, in the Amazon fast-paced type world where everybody wants everything same day or within a day, the supply chains, global economy, and logistics, all of that is super important. And we've seen that time and again with, COVID issues at the ports, longshoremen striking. There's all sorts of issues that come into play that can impact the success of many businesses across various industries. And as these different markets become more interconnected and consumer expectations rise, traditional logistics practices are really no longer sufficient. It's no longer the right answer to say, we'll just add more people. Because as we know, training people, relying on them to show up every day, just all the issues associated with variable labor, it's very important that you always look at what are the options that are going to allow me to be successful and to scale my operations. So what we're going to look at is traditional and opportunistic ways to do picking and packing within the four walls of your facilities. And the neat thing, like I mentioned earlier, is that there's a lot of automation out there. Any of you that go to ProMat or Modex, it can be overwhelming. There's a lot of shiny objects out there. And what we're going to try and do is show you the different types of picking and packing that's out there and what automations are good matches for addressing those. So what you can expect in the next 30 minutes or so is just ways that you can address increased labor costs, labor availability, how you can combat the increasing lease or building costs by optimizing your footprints more effectively, and then also focusing on service level to your clients, making sure that you improve your cycle time within your four walls, which allows you to deliver to your clients on time. So let's jump right into it. And as we go through these, what you'll see is there's a handful of ways to pick orders. And we start from the very simplest and we move on to the more sophisticated. And just like any business, as your business gets more complex, that's when you need to look at the different types of picking to optimize productivity within your four walls. So discrete picking is the way we typically see a lot of smaller operations operate. And this is where each order is picked individually. And think of it as all of your SKUs are assorted throughout your pick aisles, whether those are full pallet locations, hand stack, or bin shelving. The picker moves from location to location to fulfill the particular order. The advantages, you've got one person that's picking that order complete. So the chances of accuracy are greater because you're, basically only picking that one order at a time, whether that's picking to one pallet or filling one carton or one tote at a time. Disadvantages, as you can imagine, it can be time consuming. If you have thousands of SKUs, your pick path and your travel distance can be longer, and it takes that much more distance and time to fulfill the order. So what's another option? Another option is batch picking. That's where you go through the same pick path, but now instead of picking one order at a time, you're picking multiple orders at a time. So as you walk or use equipment to go through the pick line once, instead of fulfilling one order, you may fulfill 8 orders, 10 orders, 12 orders, 20 orders at a time, depending on the size of the orders. So with this, you are reducing travel time, increasing efficiency, and especially when you've got orders that are where you're going to the location and you're picking for those multiple orders every time you go to that location. Disadvantages, there is more complexity, and it does open up the opportunity for errors because you have to make sure you're putting the right SKU into the right order, whether that is, like I mentioned, a carton or a tote. Next one is zone picking. And think of this as the individual picking the orders, they do not leave their zone. So the travel distance is minimized and the product comes to the zone, and that can either be through conveyance, it could be through autonomous mobile robots, but the whole idea here is that the pickers are working in one smaller area, travel distances are reduced, but the disadvantage here is, or you could probably say requirement, is there's much more coordination as you're trying to bring product from zone to zone. And typically, when you're going to do zone picking, you do want to have a system that's directing the activities to make sure that there's coordination and everything is flowing effectively. Very similar and continuing on the sophistication is wave picking. So just think of wave picking as batch picking, where now you take the timing of when the orders need to be shipped, when the customer ship time and expected delivery times are, and you sort it to that next level. So now, not only are we picking multiple orders, but we're picking all those orders that need to go out at 12 o'clock at, before we batch and pick orders that need to go out at 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, et cetera. So same type of thing. The advantages, you are minimizing travel. You're doing a much better job of optimizing when the work needs to be done, and you're also having better flow within your facility. Disadvantages, once again, much more careful planning and scheduling to make sure that you're utilizing your resources throughout every hour of the day. Finally, we get into multi-order picking, and think of multi-order picking as I have a handful of SKUs where those SKUs are the only SKUs on an order. And instead of having to go through your regular pick aisles and process to pick those orders, you segregate those handful of SKUs into one small defined area, and you pick all of those orders up front towards your dock. Those never have to go through the regular picking process. Same type of thing here. It's very efficient for those orders that have those few SKUs only and high quantity of those SKUs and orders. Disadvantages, you want to make sure once again that you are using systems to organize to get all of these items and orders identified so that they can be picked. But when you take advantage of the multi-order picking, it can be very powerful because once again, travel time within a facility is always one of the big enemies. So at this point, after going through some of the pick strategies, I'm going to turn it over to Tyler, and he's going to talk about some of the different packing strategies that are out there. Oh, before I turn it over to him, though, I did want to just share this screen here that just gives you an idea of from the simple to the very complex, the different aspects as it relates to warehouse space, number of SKUs, system support or direction, and the order diversification. We'll share this deck out after the presentation, but it does give you an idea of as you go from more simplistic operations to more complex, more sophisticated, that's where you need to look at all of these different factors. All right, take it away, Tyler.
All right. So Jim has already covered a lot of the pick strategies that can help increase throughput and kind of minimize some of the risk and travel time associated with picking. But at the end of the day, those items still need to make it to the outbound dock. So packing is a necessity. Right now, I believe most people are doing what's called individual packing. It's the simplest process. Each order is packed individually, and it does have its advantages, namely that every packer must lay eyes and hands on every single order going out of the building. So it's a great opportunity for additional quality assurance. And if you have particularly valuable items or unique orders, this can be a really good way of making sure that everything looks correct on the outbound side. But there are some ways to improve this as well, namely batch picking. This is usually the easiest method to transition to because any organization that is doing individual packing now that shares that shares similar pack types. In other words, you have roughly the same size carton, the same sort of void fill and taping process. You can start to group those orders together and perform those processes in parallel instead of bouncing back and forth between one and another. The greatest opportunity here is that you can start to get some economies of scale on the outbound side while you're packing. Of course, the disadvantage is now there's no longer a packer that is placing direct eyes and hands on every single order. So we need a little bit of quality assurance upstream to ensure that everything is going out properly. And then the very last form of pack strategy, if you will, and this comes with a heavy caveat that it's heavily dependent on your order profile, so there needs to be some data backing this up. But if you do ship multiple orders to the same customer, one of the best ways to reduce the amount of material and time used in packing is to consolidate those orders, take some of the earlier orders and hold them off for maybe a day, and then wait for orders to accumulate and ship them out in one box. Again, this is not something that just anyone can transition to. You typically need customers that consistently order several orders at once so that we can ship them out at the same time. But again, we can reduce expenses and certainly minimize waste by not individually packing every single order out to the exact same customer. But it does get a little bit more complex. Sometimes it does require a little bit of system integration as well to handle this, but it can be a huge win if your order profile supports this.
All right, so we've kind of given you an idea of how the different pick types are executed within the four walls, and the same thing on the packing side. So let's talk about advanced pick and pack strategies. So these are ways that you can help to improve labor costs and space utilization. So think of that as the double win within your four walls. So from a pick strategy side, there are the first opportunity that we're going to talk about in more detail on the future slides is picking individual orders into a shippable box and then using conveyance to move the product. So this is one that addresses the travel that we talked about in the previous slides, where here the picker is going to be working in their area. Think of, like a pick module, maybe it's 1, 2, 3 level pick module, but the product is conveyed via zone routing or pick and pass to the individual. And they can have different technologies that are interfacing with them, where they're picking individual orders into a box that's already sized for the specific order, and then we use conveyance to take the product away. You can also do batch picking to tote. So same type of thing, where we're going to pick multiple orders worth of a given SKU into a tote, let conveyance take it on its way, and then you can sort to and by individual orders downstream. Finally, you can look at goods to persons technologies. And with these, think of it as storing of products with no aisles. All the product is presented to the worker. The worker will pick individual orders into a shippable box that have been sized based on the cube and the items that are going to be a part of that particular order. And then conveyance takes you to the pack areas. And within the packaging areas, the strategies to help optimize those particular activities, carton erectors. So carton erectors are great because they do all the things that a human would normally do. Think of it as making boxes, taping them up, but they're doing it on demand based on information coming from the WMS, the cubes and the quantities of the items, to say this is the right size box that you should be picking into to minimize cube, minimize dunnage. Auto tapers, same type of thing. The carton is erected automatically. It's also taped automatically. Inline weigh scales. These are great to address the accuracy of orders. And with these, if you're supposed to have 5 of this, 10 of that, and 12 of another item, and the WMS knows the weight of each of those items, it also knows the weight of the corrugate for the box. If the if the carton is outside of the weight tolerance for that, it'll kick it out to a hospital lane for further investigation. So it's a great way to make sure that you're ensuring accuracy on the back end. You also have
So Jim,
yeah, go ahead.
So a lot of the picking strategies that we're seeing here are related to the cutting out of, if you want to call it, the walk time of a resource, right? It's keeping him more centered so that he's not using that wasted time of moving from place to place. Is that, I mean, cutting that labor time?
Correct. It's one of the 8 forms of waste is travel or transportation. And that's one of the big ones that these pick strategies do is they help to bring the product to the worker as opposed to the worker going to the product.
And the packing strategies is kind of another area in the fact that it's the redundancy, taking the redundancy out of people's work and that redundant constant movement that they have to do. Is that right?
Correct.
Right.
It also drives consistency and safety checks or those type of things without having to have a person tied to the activity.
Perfect. Thank
Yep,
you.
you bet. So the print and apply, once again on the end, once you have created the carton, you taped it, you picked it, you made sure it's all correct, then you can do all of the parcel labeling on the back end, any hazmat labeling, all of those different things on the back end, even the rate shopping that goes into it. And finally, dunnage stations for applying dunnage. However, the nice part about that is what you find using these strategies is there's less need for the dunnage because you are right sizing your cartons. All right, so this is a visual here of kind of what we were talking about the first one, where we're picking the individual order into a shippable box and then we're using conveyance. And the neat part about this is you can kind of see this person is working and they're picking the items. And in this particular case, it's a pick to light system. So you can see by that person in red, there is a red light and a green light. So the system will light up and it'll let the person know that you need to pick from this box, gives you the quantity, and they know then that's what needs to go into each one of the boxes. And they scan each one of the boxes as it's coming by their work area. Another area beyond just technology is slotting. So slotting can help you with ensuring that when the worker has to perform their job, the majority of their picks are coming from their golden zone area. So for this particular person, you want it between shoulder and waist high where they do most of their picking because that's ergonomically more friendly for the picker. They're going to be more efficient and it's going to be safer for the worker because they're not bending down or reaching up high to do their picks. And then finally, proper sizing of pick locations is another big win that you can do by analyzing the movement of your different items, making sure that you've got the right quantity in the forward pick to be able to handle either a day or a week's worth of supply so that when orders come through, you don't have to have pickers waiting on replenishments or having orders held up and not being able to be fulfilled. Very similar, same type of thing. Here we're using totes where we're picking product and putting it into the totes. And at this point, we are picking for multiple orders. So think of this once again as I might need for this particular wave, 50 of this item that's going to go across 20 different orders. I'm going to pick all of these into a tote. And then on the back end, if we go to the next slide, there is technology out there that can do the sorting into all of the final orders. So think of the batched quantities in the bigger totes coming into this machine, and then this machine takes it and says, okay, if you're looking at this particular one, it looks like we have about 40 different orders that are going out in this wave. It's going to be able to fill each one of those orders with the right items and the right quantities of items without any human intervention. And then from this, we can convey these totes to the pack area. So I'm going to hand it back over to Tyler. He's going to talk about some more of the goods to person opportunities for picking, and then he's going to transition into how that moves into the packing opportunity and packing automation.
Yep, thank you. So I want to preface this by saying when we talk about automation, a lot of times the term goods to person comes up, and there are several solutions in a goods to person system that I think we'll talk about a little bit later. But it does exactly what the name implies. It brings the goods directly to the person who's going to be picking the item, which is going to eliminate the number one waste in any picking operation, which is travel. I think something that Jim and David touched on a little bit before. So if we can eliminate the need for travel and then also present the right item with 100% accuracy to the picker every time, we can gain some efficiencies pretty much all the way across the board. But we can also take this and we can pair it with what I would consider to be the cherry on top, which is picking directly into the outbound shippable box. Because in the packing automation, contrary to the picking operation, the sourcing and constructing of corrugate tends to be the biggest waste there as well. So if we can sort of preempt that with a goods to person technology or something like a carton erector, then we can eliminate travel and eliminate the largest waste in packing at the same time. We can also take this and then go even one step further and pair it with an auto taper, or print and apply, and an inline weight scale so that we can assure accuracy and again eliminate those nitpicky things that happen on the outbound process that can possibly be better suited by some form of automation. And then there's also sort of a little caveat to that as well. If you're picking individual orders from a goods to person technology and not batching, then there's no need for sortation. So that's a huge win as well. And we don't need to worry about slotting and reslotting continually as demand changes within a goods to person technology because the presentations happen at the same time and the same rate regardless. So it does eliminate a little bit of the volatility if your outbound order profile and your monthly summary tends to look bimodal or tend to have like a strong season, if you will. You can ramp up and ramp down demand without needing to manage resources in conjunction with that. So here are a few of those goods to person examples. This is by no means all inclusive. There are a seemingly infinite number of different solutions, and it does vary greatly from customer to customer. No one solution is correct for every customer, but the example shown here on the top left is a Geek Plus. Top right is a OPEX Perfect Pick, and down at the bottom is an auto store. So again, the correct solution varies from customer to customer. Most of the time it ends up falling back on what the ROI looks like because we don't want to implement a solution that isn't going to end up saving us money in the long run, of course. And there's really two things that drive an ROI when you're considering a goods to person. And the first one, and the most easily realized, is the throughput. For example, a lot of these systems can get you up to 400 picks per hour, which is well beyond what most people can do by walking with several different employees. So we can do that typically from a single goods to person system, eliminating, again, travel time, but also increasing throughput, again, tailored to demand as well. So you can meet demand digitally instead of having to hire on or reallocate more resources throughout the year. But another one that drives the ROI is an opportunity cost, which is typically utilizing the full clear height and therefore also maximizing the density within a space. The reason I call this an opportunity cost is because it really extends the amount of time that you can typically stay in a building or build out a current pick mod without needing to expand if you start to reach the upper limits of your building right now. There is, again, there's always a solution seemingly for almost every client in the goods to person. It just has to be the right one. This is an area where it needs to be heavily leveraged by your data, and we really highly recommend reaching out to consultants and experts before making a decision like this, That way we can avoid chasing, the shiny objects in the room and start focusing on what you really need. That way we can get that ROI built up, get it down, to maybe 2 years or less, and start realizing the potential of what you currently have. And then we've given several examples of pack automation, but I wanted to go through these really quickly so that we can kind of apply a visual here. This is a print and apply that I think we talked about a little bit before. The print and apply is going to apply labels, and even in the next slide, there's many different variations of a print and apply for different carton sizes, different labeling, one or two top or bottom. But this eliminates the need to print individual labels and then have a person put those on. This way we can get very consistent placement. We can print and apply in real time directly. And then we can also free up a resource that might just be putting labels on a box to do something more complicated or perhaps even more fulfilling. But my personal favorite on the right side is the inline weight scale. Not only do we need to weigh our outbound shipments for any carrier data that they may require, but when we talk about doing batch picking, zone picking, wave picking, and then also picking into a outbound carton, what we're really doing is eliminating the amount of hands and eyes that need to be on every box going out. So the number one concern for many clients is, how do I know that the order is being fulfilled properly? Do we need another hospital lane? Do we need some quality assurance associate? And a lot of times the inline weight scale can eliminate that uncertainty in the outbound process by pairing with your WMS, using the right data and saying this package should be 12.4 ounces and it's within a quarter of an ounce, so it's within margin. Or if there was a mispick, or someone picked too much of one item, not enough, any of the variations of a mispick, then the scale can determine that there is an error here, and we can divert that package around to have it double checked by a human as well. So this not only serves as a quick way to gather the data that you need on the outbound side, but also use that data to make sure that everything going out meets the quality specifications. And then here is just a plethora of different print and apply options that we have as well. That again, it varies by box. This is going to be sort of a custom tailored item depending on your product sizes, product cube, average quantity per line, lines picked, all that fun stuff. But the carton erector is a really interesting one because it can, in real time, look at the cube of an order and not just produce the same generic box time and time again, but also tailor the size of that box to properly meet the order itself. So we can, program in certain margins for things like packing materials, peanuts, airbags, etc. But what we can also do is shrink the size of that box to avoid being dim weighted on outbound. This not only protects the items a little bit better and prevents any rattling around, but it eliminates the waste of having extra packaging material on the inside and can reduce the overall shipping cost as well.
All right, so we're hoping that you found this webinar informative. Here at Alpine, we've analyzed thousands of sets of data for our clients, and really the key is to make sure that, like I had mentioned and Tyler had mentioned, that the right solution is put into place for your business today and what you forecast for the future. So very important as you look to invest in goods to person technologies, that you've got the proper business case and the return on investment analysis. That is something that Alpine can definitely help you with. We like to think of it as ready, aim, fire. A lot of times people will make the purchase and then figure out, how are we going to make this work for our business? Alpine is very agnostic in our approach, and we're very familiar with all the different technologies out there. So we tend to be one of the partners that are out there that Tyler had mentioned, that can help you on the journey and make sure that the hurdle rate is met for your given organization. I think the last piece that I wanted to talk to you about is just we can also work to help identify the optimal storage types for your pick and reserve locations. That's just as important as technology, making sure that you got the right items in the right storage types, and that can help you to address the footprint within your building. A lot of times we do have clients come to us where they're looking to move into a new facility, and we're able to do a storage type analysis that shows them if you just increase the amount of dense storage for the items that are a good fit for it, you can actually stay within the four walls. So the combination of maximizing your space utilization, pairing it with the right automation can really be a powerful tool to optimize both space and labor within your four walls. So with that, we're going to open it up to any questions that might be out there.
Right now, we're not seeing many questions. I guess I have one big question is that with all of this, I mean, this is just these are just tools in the whole group of designing and laying out a warehouse or a building or a manufacturing area, right? It's just one part of that whole process. We actually look at the entire plan as we're designing these things, right?
That is correct. It's a very collaborative, integrated approach. We work very closely with our clients, with our partners, to not only just look at the storage, but look at all the different processes that are going on within a facility to make sure that everything works hand in glove.
Right. And the other thing here is this is not just oh, let's eliminate resources, but it's a tools that you can add on to help your growth and help your movement forward with things without having to add more resources. It's tools to, basically enhance your team as well as, they always talk elimination, but it's more about the uh, the growth of your business, right? What am I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, no, you hit it on the head. Automation isn't for eliminating headcount, it's for scaling growth. And that's the way to think about it. When you're operating in a facility with 10 employees and you're shipping 100 orders a day, you don't need automation. But when your business doubles, quadruples, and you start to say, wow, I don't need 10 people, I need 100 people, then you start to get into, okay, if I'm looking at automation, that can actually have a very compelling ROI versus just scaling up headcount. And it also gives you much more consistent, reliable results because the automation is designed to run, 24/7. One of the questions we had out there is, what's the typical lead time for a goods to person solution? And depending on the technology, we're probably looking in that 12 to 14 months all in from concept design all the way through manufacturing, implementation, and commissioning of a system. So if you're thinking about uh, lead times and what it take to execute that fully, that's probably a good rule of thumb to use. And it also helps you to kind of work backwards from, when you feel that you actually want to be implementing the new technology.
We have another question here for you guys. Are you fielding many questions or inquiries into the use of RFID to provide efficiency and visibility into the supply chain logistics process? And how do you support those discussions?
Well, I think the short answer is yes. However, RFID tracking became, I think, a little bit more important with some of the FDA's concerns around food tracing and traceability for any FDA regulated products. So we typically don't work with that directly. We have partners that do, not namely because they might appreciate it. Levada is one of the industry leading barcodes and RFID taggers, providing equipment for both the labels themselves and the scanners. So we certainly do work with customers that have those requirements, but we are not the leading expert on RFID. So we typically do outsource that to our partners who are the experts.
Fair enough. Another question we have, how much historical order and inventory data do you require to properly play in a facility?
Typically, it required is sort of a loose term because every customer is different. I've had customers that only have really good data for the last few months, so we always have to preface that every solution we can come up with is based on the accuracy of the historical data, and if that time period is short, the variability is long. I like to see a year's worth of orders with some insight into what previous years looks like. The only reason I need previous years is typically to compare with expected growth rates in the future to make sure that they are not outlandish goals that we're going to, quote, build the church for Easter Sunday or potentially undersize it. But I would say if you have a solid year's worth of inbound and outbound data, you have a quality item master with dimensions, units of measures, and weights, there's almost nothing we can't do within your facility.
And then it's a really good question too, because it is important to understand, peak month, peak week, peak day, and even, peak hours within your facility. Because if you're going to be considering automation alternatives, it has to be able to handle, your peaks that you're going to be experiencing. And it's also very important then beyond just the data that Tyler mentioned, but understanding what are your growth projections? What are we building the system for? 1 year out, 5 years out. So all of those are components of the solution that we work very closely with our clients on.
Okay, that seems to be the questions we have. Thank you so very much, my friends, for stepping in and giving us great insight into your world.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance.
Yep, thank you very much. We appreciate it. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
All right. Thanks all.